second time the show has not started the way I really wanted it to start because I keep adding things to the mix. But welcome to the AntiClimactic NonShow with your host. I was in the middle of doing what I thought would be cool, like this. I wanted to start in the dark. My plan was to start in the dark today because I finally got the thing that belongs here every single day in the studio, but that had burned out. So we're going to do that real quick. We're going to start in the dark. And then we're going to... See, this is good. I think this should be interesting. Oh, that one should be closed back too, though, shouldn't it? Yeah. So it's kind of like this sort of a move. Every day, we light the candle, and then we open the music computer and turn on the lights. And this is how we start our day at the AntiClimactic NonShow. So it's more like easing into it. Then the show starts. I was noticing yesterday I kind of just started firing off. And that's not a good way to do things. So I was kind of liking the idea of starting in the dark. And then light goes on, candle goes into its place. The new candle has an awesome scent, by the way, very light. Sage thing going on. Then you have the music computer and, visual imagery computer. And then we have this computer where I can now see this in a slight delay, which I like. And so the vlog begins, live streaming, the AntiClimactic NonShow. Good morning, California, 9 a.m., good morning. ANYC, lunchtime, what up? End of the workday in the UK. 10:30 Mumbai, just before bedtime maybe. 2 a.m. in Tokyo and 4 a.m. in Sydney. Welcome, viewer. This is the AntiClimactic NonShow. You are the only viewer today so far. Show starts at 9 a.m. if you're in California, noon, New York. I don't know where you are, but welcome to the AntiClimactic NonShow with your host. And I'm just getting started here, so I got to fire up the YouTube so I can be actually watching chat and participating in chat at the same time. Today's content, there's a couple of things going to happen physically in the studio today. One of them is, you see we added this guy up here, this fish, to cover up the air conditioning unit. And then the other thing I want is, I didn't see now on YouTube, the frame is way wider. And this, I did not expect to be in here. So we're going to do a studio shift today. And I'm going to bring that over to here amidst all the action. That's what's going to happen today. But this is the AntiClimactic NonShow, so your expectations should be related to the fact that the show is generally anticlimactic and it isn't really a show. Alright, here we go. I'm going to look at me doing this so that we can chat as well. Oh, look, see. Mute that. Welcome to the AntiClimactic NonShow with your host. Now, today there were a couple of topics we were going to cover. One of them was the idea of The Burden of the Black Intellectual is a piece that has been written recently that I was reading, and so I was thinking about picking up on the concept that we talked about a couple of days ago, wherein there's a kind of performative aspect to the good immigrant behavior. if you perform a certain way and behave a certain way among certain American groups, you climb social strata using the mechanism of what you are willing to parrot to them. This is what Octavio Paz called social truths. He said the North American has social truths instead of real truths. And so there was this article, which is pretty amazing, about that. Like, if you're an academic and you're being called upon to comment and you're feeling that you're being tokenized, right? You're being called upon to comment solely because of the color of your skin, or your whatever the thing is that makes you that. So Michael Denzel Smith, The Gatekeepers, is the piece. And hi, welcome to the program. I see we have a couple of new viewers. That's nice. And we're not going to read the piece because it's too long, but we're going to reflect on the question today. Like, what is your burden to a society that you live in, and particularly to the United States, for example, where, you know, we have a certain degree of freedom. What's up, A. Metcalf? What's going on? Welcome to the program. This is the AntiClimactic NonShow. It's pretty anticlimactic, and it's not a show. Let's take a look at the papers real quick. One of the first things I want to do every day is kind of look at the news, see what's happening. Yesterday we talked about this Chinese scientist. Watching with Christopher. Hi, Christopher. Michael Cohen pleading guilty to lying to Congress is the top story in the AP News today. Interesting. This has just happened. I'm going to take a look at this real quick, and I'll try to summarize. Michael Cohen, or I can just read it to you. This is a piece from, this is Larry Neumeister in AP as of 55 minutes ago. Michael Cohen, President Donald Trump's former lawyer, made a surprise appearance before a federal judge in New York on Thursday and pleaded guilty to lying to Congress about work he did on an aborted project to build a Trump Tower in Russia. That's that. Now, I don't know if you've been following all of this, but this is interesting. Trump, in turn, called Cohen, quote, a weak person who is lying to get a lighter sentence. But the net, I believe, is beginning to be drawn around the president concerning a couple of weird things that have gone on with the Russians. China has halted the work. Marilyn Marcioni, who covered the story for AP on the scientist who has claimed to have edited the gene sequence of impendingly born human babies. Well, today, China's government has ordered a halt to the work by the team that claimed to help make these babies. Chinese Vice Minister of Science and Technology Xu Nanping told state broadcaster CCTV that his ministry is strongly opposed to the efforts that reportedly produced twin girls born earlier this month. Xu called the team's action illegal and unacceptable. So that's interesting. So this researcher, He Jiankui, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he has studied under Western doctors in California, and one of them yesterday, quoted by the AP, talked about how he could see where this guy was going, and was not was telling him that wasn't necessarily a good direction to go some time ago. And now this guy seems to have been operating on his own, and now China has called it illegal, halted it, and one of their vice ministers of science and technology has called it illegal. So, yesterday my comment was, isn't it inevitable? And what I meant by that is, yes, you should be terrified, I think, by that. But also, once this genome and sequencing became within our purvey, I think we're going to at least theoretically take this to this level on paper, And presumably there's going to be international discourse about how or what is ethical about uh, editing the genes of your progeny. But when I ask myself to think about this as a human, as I am, a citoyen du monde, and extra national citizen, if you will, and I think about how the Chinese think about things when I've been among them, like the way they think about food, you could take as an example, or the way we do in India, or the way we do in the United States, and you start to ask the questions concerning the ethics of such behavior. You run into the difficulty of, well, I don't think bureaucracy is fast enough or small enough to deal with the reality that scientists are going to do this, is the upshot. But it is interesting that China seems to have. I mean, how can the Vice Minister of Science and Technology not have known this guy was doing this? Because he went to study in the West, came here, and achieved this without making them aware, right? So I'll be very curious to see what happens to this particular person. Ukraine bars non-nationals from going to Crimea. So Ukrainian border guards are now saying all non-Ukrainians will be barred from crossing into Crimea by land. So it's a martial law of sorts, as tensions there seem to be rising. AP is going to be more conservative. Let's take a look at the BBC, shall we? I'm sure it'll be front page news at the BBC. Oh, they've got Cohen on the front page as well. Yeah, so I think that AP story's from yesterday on Crimea. All right, so wait, look at that. We've got yet another viewer. Hi, welcome, viewer. This is the AntiClimactic NonShow with your host. This program starts every day at the same time, and it runs hopefully for an hour and sometimes longer. And the course of discussion shall be governed by, oh look, so here we go. Science is not neutral. Science is not neutral, says viewer Christopher Carwilde. Now, how do you mean that, Christopher? You love the non-show? Oh, cool. Well, welcome to the non-show, man. The non-show has the capacity of not really being a show, so we can have discourse, I think, here freely. I should hope you feel free. Now, how do you mean science is not neutral? We were discussing here, folks, if you're just joining the program, the editing of the genes of unborn children as a science, and I have a strong feeling it's going to be inevitable. It has happened, apparently, without the proper channels, if you will, in China, by a guy who has been trained in the West and who has learned to CRISPR, which is a Western, a lot of this stuff is Bay Area stuff, by the way, biotech from Berkeley and surrounding areas. So students have come there and gone back and come there and gone lots of places. And in some instances, I would guess that it's difficult for agencies in a communist country like China to be so observant and educated enough to know whether or not what the guy is doing is illegal or unethical. And what we're talking about is unethical according to whom? So Christopher says he agrees that genomic manipulation is inevitable, and that's I think that's a scary. I think of that as a scary projection, but I think it's very real. I think a lot of this stuff is that we're human, and we can try to govern ourselves, and we do. I hope, through a wide variety of methods. Right, through religions and through civic structures and through wars. When we decide a person is being oppressive. So I don't see us being collectively wise enough not to use the power we have gained since 2003. And for those of you who don't know to what I'm referring here, we're talking about the mapping of the human genome. And the subsequent window of years after that, these 15 years after that, in which now tools have been made to manipulate genes. and the fact that this person has done this in China. So I don't know. If it's inevitable, it's like the thing we were talking about the other day. Christopher, you may have missed the program the other day, or any of you viewers may have. This is only program 4. This is program 4 of the Anticlimactic Non-Show, which is, we began making this sign on day 1, so this is going to also, we're going to continue collaging some stuff onto there, painting onto there, but this is just day 4 of this program. And so there's going to be evolution in a lot of ways to things that are going on, both behind me and in terms of the content. But we're trying to do headlines as we start, because I was a newsman for so long, and it's kind of a fun thing to engage in. But I think it's more fun to talk about things in relation to, I don't know, the future, for example, than it is to wring our hands about the present or complain about the past. So the other day we were discussing the notion of just, okay, let's plan for there being 10 billion people. Let's get one with the notion that we're going to get to 10 billion humans on this earth, and resource allocation is going to require that we deal with that. Instead of having apocalyptic visions and impending into people's heads the idea of, how about a genocide that kills half the people like Thanos? Or how about, telling people that apocalypses are coming to wipe out people? Or, digging shelters for you and 6 other humans. Or putting energy into all of this visualization of an ending, into a more balanced approach about just believing that we're going to hit 10 billion, so how are we going to all deal with this? I'm talking about philosophically. So one of the ways I deal with it philosophically is, okay, well, I don't need that much. So how can I decrease my footprint to where I feel at least like I'm not, and I could take more away in any given instance if someone else needed it, right? So philosophical and ethical ways of just preparing for the fact that there are going to be more people and less resources over the next X number of years is, I think, comparable to what we're talking about with regard to genomic manipulation when we say it's inevitable. Now we're talking about ethics and how we, you and I, maybe whoever's watching the program, you should chime in, any of you should, would consider eliminating sickle cell from those who might be prone to it. Or, like, are we now approaching the immortality thing? Are we now approaching that some of us, who ever have access to genomic manipulation, can select ourselves out, right? And then is the presumption that that's going to be the wealthy, right? Very interesting times we're living in, I would argue. It is nice to see let's see, we have 300% more viewers here at the Anticlimactic Non-Show today on episode 4. That's quite exciting. You're all welcome here. Please do use the chat window. What I try to do is go about 20 minutes and then take a break and then hit some tunes, play a little music, and then chat again for another 20 minutes or so, and then play some music. And it's nice to, now that the chat exists, I comprehend how this can be used as a tool. Feel free to contribute notions and ideas. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to read a piece about, I'm going to read from a piece about the burden of the black public intellectual. That's what we were talking about at the top of the hour. And some things that I thought were kind of fascinating about this piece. Well, we may not do it in the next 20. We might save that for the third 20. But that's in the works here. Let me see if I can find some tunage for you guys. See, we have a speaker here, you see. This speaker is going to provide you with sound. So let me see if I can achieve that real quick. And I'll be making some adjustments that I came here to do that today, so. A little tree branch in the front center would be nice, huh? That is right. Christopher is correct. That is Farida Hanum. And so what I've noticed is that there's copyright claims made on any music I play, which is why I've turned this more into a talk radio program until I can produce some music of my own. And there's all kinds of crazy tools by which we could do that, I was thinking earlier. And of course, I can also play things that I've produced or others have produced as well that won't claim it. But since this is only day 4, we're trying to just kind of construct what is this environment going to be like, and how is the non-show going to work. One example of that is that I didn't realize so much of this space was going to be in frame because the YouTube frame is really wide, which is killer. I really am impressed by the frame of YouTube on my camera. So now today what I'm doing is I'm gonna trick out this little area over here. But the Anticlimactic Non-Show will always have this signage, so even when we're not in studio, for example, what I love about having this show be, or non-show be on at this time, is that it'll always be this time, but it may not always be in this location. And as the program states, it's the Anticlimactic Non-Show with your host. So that could be, you know, your host may not look like I look one day, for example, for the Anticlimactic Non-Show. Now, see, so that gap, I added this fish up here, which I'm liking to cover the that bit. But now, see, I want to stick something over here that's going to kind of come into play. So today we may kind of work on that a little bit as well. So, A. Metcalf, Christopher Carl Wilde, thank you very much for commenting. And please feel free to, you know, add any topics of discourse that you would like to. I'm trying to remember what we're supposed to do. Oh, yeah, we did news. Oh, I was going to try to do... we only did BBC and AP, so let's take a look at some of these other... just real quick, taking a look at news around the world and country. As we were discussing last time, a beautiful thing to do is kind of just open multiple pages. Oh, it's raining in LA. Nice. That must be pleasant. It is raining in LA. That is great to hear, man. LA is one of those places, like my home place in Tamil Nadu, where when it rains, everybody runs outside because it feels so good to get wet in the rain, because it doesn't happen very often. But, of course, now comes, with it, mudslides, which are the horror of this double whammy combination of the wildfires and the mudslides in Los Angeles. And so when you open the Los Angeles Times, of course, on the front page you have, by Hannah Fry, as storms roll across fire-scarred Southern California, regions of California, the National Weather Service is issuing a flood advisory in areas recently scarred by fires in Los Angeles and Ventura County. She's saying shortly after 5 a.m., the moderate to heavy rain was spreading east across southern Ventura County, headed toward the Hill and Woolsey fire burn areas. Now, the horror that was Santa Barbara last year, I don't know if all of you know, but that was just a nightmare of a situation. It was like... And if we're talking about accepting now that the wildfires are just going to be how California life is from now on, which is, okay, again, earlier in the show we were talking about things that are terrifying, but you have to start accepting them, because not accepting them is pointless and foolish. So if that's coming, well, this 1-2 punch seems to be part of it as well. Because the land is loose, and this mudsliding is devastating. The primary thing we should have addressed from the beginning is rampant overdevelopment of the state, using cheap materials, and etc. And allowing it to be kindling, basically, for the fires that have spread. And then subsequently, because of the foundational shifting as well, now you have mudslides. So, I don't know how we're going to deal with this, quite honestly. Let's see, Pepperdine has canceled classes because of the rain out in Malibu. They're putting sandbags up in several neighborhoods. Emergency management is telling people to evacuate from a bunch of the places that were burned by the Holy Fire in Riverside County. So flash flooding is a possibility in Los Angeles. So it's crazy. The beauty of this whole idea of doing a show like this, folks, is that I can now even just make you mobile, right? And you and I can just look at the radar over Los Angeles right now. Like, we can just go, boop, boop, boop. Here we are, just looking at the rain and traveling over the counties of Los Angeles. So, whoa, what happened? Everything got screwy. I spun the camera around by accident, I think. Yeah, sorry. Did it twice. God, that gaping white hole is a huge annoyance, isn't it? We should put things in here. But that that you're mobile, that we can look at anything, that we can discuss anything, is, I think, a part of what the AntiClimactic NonShow's basic principles are. I was thinking yesterday, because I'm reading articles occasionally, in the last two episodes of the AntiClimactic NonShow, you would have heard me read a comedic piece by Katie Wynn, and a really powerful piece by Kevin Baker on the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, that ends up becoming this like beautiful expression of pacifism. And so I was thinking to myself, if there's things you'd like me to read, like if you don't have time to read them, and you want me to read them during the show, you could just send a link, and I could read aloud whatever is sent here. Is one way the show could actually work as well. That said, checking the papers. Trump has canceled his meeting with Putin, citing unresolved naval standoff issues. See what else is going on in the world here. I like checking the Merc too. My favorite paper in the Bay Area is the San Jose Mercury News. The Cron, when I arrived, I arrived in 93 to San Francisco. And the Cron was like intellectually inferior to the New York Times, or to say the Chicago Tribune, or to say the Washington Post. The LA Times wasn't even a paper I thought of, really. I might have thought of the Herald in Miami before I thought of the LA paper. But the Cron was kind of like, it was the paper and it had been around forever, but it wasn't considered, and it wasn't really an intellectual, it was a cultural paper. And so the San Jose Mercury News by contrast, was at the center of the explosion that became Silicon Valley, right? So I've been reading the Mercury News for many, many years as a result. I really I think it's a great, if you want to get familiar with what's going on in the Bay Area. Yeah, use the Cron for SF and you know the Oakland. They have the Bay Area News Group and so on. But one of the things about the Mercury News is you're getting, I think, a different and deeper view of the business side of things in Silicon Valley. And now that the Valley has moved up into Oakland and made it hipster and everywhere else, I think it's a paper that is worth a look, generally speaking. Breaking news there reads, Bay Area soaked by overnight rain, hail, showers, thunderstorms still expected. Wow, so the Bay is getting slammed with rain, hail, thunderstorms. Google Village could bring 25,000 jobs to downtown San Jose. Greater densities than initially envisioned for the Google Transit Village. That's interesting. I like that they're building down there. San Francisco supervisor wants Mark Zuckerberg's name stripped from a city hospital he must have given money to. Facebook. Oh, it's a good time to quickly pitch Siva's book. In my opinion, one of, if not the most important book in the country. Published by Oxford University Press. A respectable university in this world. This book came out this summer, and one of the things I like to tell people is, like, if this was 1955 or something, and you thought of one of the big companies in America that had huge influence in America, right? GM or GE, Westinghouse, or you know, AT&T or something, and oh, there we go. Christopher has read it. Excellent. He's off Facebook now for a month and a half after reading the book. Well, that's great. So I'm just going to, since Christopher has brought it up, that's what I think about Siva's book, Anti-Social Media. He's an academic who has written a book about a big company that is very powerful in our society, and he's done it with, you know, it's not some kind of like personal or political critique, but right at the critical time when this was necessary, Dr. Vaidyanathan, who is the director of media studies at the University of Virginia. That's Thomas Jefferson's university, isn't it? The University of Virginia? I feel like it is. He's the Robertson Professor of Media Studies and the director of the Center for Media and Citizenship, okay, at the University of Virginia. He and I went to University of Texas together. He graduated a year before me, his undergrad. He did his PhD there, though. Anyway, Dr. Vaidyanathan has written many books. He wrote The Googleization of Everything in 2008, was the first academic to try to write a book about Google. Remember, these are private companies here. And one of the things that Siva was saying in that book, one of his first books, was that what we've done is we've taken so much information that should be in a library. Libraries are what we used to have for that. And we've gifted it to a private company, which tells us that its motto is, don't be evil, and we'll take care of it for us. Which was just astonishing that he was attempting to take on something that even while everyone is using Google, it's not about trying to take down Google or take down Facebook. I think it is about letting people know what it is they're using. Honestly studying it and letting you know what it is you're using. Because if you did know what exactly was going on, you may elect not to use it, or you may elect to use it in a very specific way, right? I know people who do think of it that way. That's just for my business, or blah, 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 blah. But you may not know how much of everything else is being secreted into that because you've agreed without thinking about it to the terms of service or whatever, to things that you don't really understand. And Siva's book is fantastic at a clear chronological explanation of Zuckerberg, the company, etc., put into a grouping of chapters that I really love, because it's cool how it takes this company that he's choosing to analyze and breaks it up into various devices that this company functions as in our society. Like the chapters are, well, the introduction is the problem with Facebook is Facebook, but the chapters are the pleasure machine. then the surveillance machine, then the attention machine, then the benevolence machine, the protest machine, the politics machine, the disinformation machine, and his conclusion, the nonsense machine, which is fantastic. The way he's organized the book, and then shows you clearly how this company has been built, makes it an invaluable book. I really do hope anybody who has not yet picked up a copy of Antisocial Media, do so. Send it to your friends and family for Christmas. Christopher, you read it. So you quit. Did you? So you quit shortly thereafter. You say, huh? But did you? But what did you think of the book? Maybe you could just write a couple of thoughts you had about the book, if you don't mind, because I feel like I keep saying the same things to people. I was not a user. I've never used Facebook, so you would be a user, and your critique might be more interesting than mine. You know. Welcome to the AntiClimactic NonShow with your host. This program starts every day about 36 minutes ago. So if you're in Sydney, Australia, and it's 4 a.m., you're getting up because you want to go down to the fishmonger to pick up something to throw on the Barbie later. Good morning to you. G'day. Has the sun risen in the summertime of Australia yet? Would be a question I might ask you. So yeah, Siva's book, Antisocial Media. Let's see, we're almost at the 40-minute mark, so we're going to probably have some more music here shortly. I had some content ideas, but I got all excited about moving stuff, and I was supposed to move the stuff before we started today. Brought a ladder even for this purpose. And I just didn't get here in time to do the installations I wanted to do. So I might, during the music set here, I might just do some physical stuff and just let this, roll. You can just kind of watch that. Might be the next step of this thing. This is the AntiClimactic NonShow, episode 4. Oh, that's good. Necessary antidote bolstered my paranoia with facts, is what Christopher Carl Wilde says about antisocial media. Necessary antidote. Necessary antidote. That's a good one. I do agree with Christopher that it is a necessary antidote. What do you want to listen to? Here, let me see if I can find something nice to put on here. Oops. That is the Miles Davis Quintet live in Belgium. this thing. Christopher, I think you'll recognize this actually. I don't know if you will or not. There's a portion of San Francisco right here. Yeah, I like it. I like it. So what I realized is when the show is live, technically, right, like, they can't stop me from playing music or claim copyright control. But if what I understand is correct about Article 13 in Europe, and maybe we could talk about that, about Article 13 in Europe, which, like, as a DJ, if I tell you what everything is, for example, and I'm doing it to promote your music, right? So all of those copyright things are because if this non-show were to go commercial, if this were to be about making money, which it never will be, because it's supposed to be an intellectual exercise. The anticlimactic non-show is an intellectual exercise. It is an anti-commercial intellectual exercise. Okay, the anticlimactic non-show. It's not going to be functioning that way, but if it were to make money, then every one of those people would come and say, okay, well, I need 35 cents per blah, 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 yeah. Or, by this Article 13 in Europe, they could find me liable for copyright violation, just for spinning the record, right? So I've been asking myself on the show here, like, so if I just put the radio on, right, and a song comes on, am I violating copyright? That's kind of, strikes me that, like, look, I am a pirate. You understand that? I am a pirate. I like pirate radio. I have made pirate radio for 35 years. I think pirate radio is great. I think a soapbox at the park, in an area of the park where a person can slam their soapbox down and climb up on top of that thing and bark at everybody about how crazy things are and wrong or whatever they need to get out, it's cool with me. And so, kind of feel like I want to play whatever music I want, right? I mean, it strikes me. This reminds me of a long time ago. That's cool. It's a great construction site piece, you see. I always use it as a placeholder. So at least now, it's not so white back there. Huh. kind of a weak fade, sorry. So yeah, construction is basically what's going on here a lot of the time at the Anticlimactic Non-Show. But in the future, this will be an hour packed with content. There will be fascinating conversation. I guarantee you, because I'll get someone else in here. Or perhaps you could contribute by chiming in, letting us know where you are in the world, using the chat window. For example, A. Metcalf, where are you in this world? Yesterday, we had a guy from South Jersey. We had a fellow from South Jersey who was a journalist, but now writes fiction. And I love fiction, and we started talking about George Saunders yesterday because he's in Jersey. Oh, cool. Metcalf's in Los Angeles as well. So you're getting wet right now too, huh? Bunch of LA in the house, as it were. I should be talking about things that LA would be interested in, right? There must be something LA could be interested in this. No, I guess not. I guess there's really nothing I have or own or have ever considered that could be useful to anyone in Los Angeles. This is what we've concluded today. You know, that's the beauty of this program, though, is that we learn something every single time. See, now we got a little gap down here. Could the Anticlimactic Non-Show sign go there? That would be so useful. Is that visible? Kinda. Los Angeles. What else I got for you? I don't know. Why don't you tell me what's going on in Los Angeles? Why don't you, A. Metcalf, and Christopher tell me? It's raining, you say, and it's going to rain all day. They're talking about hail up north. I don't know if you saw that, but that's pretty crazy. Hail in the Bay Area. We kind of abandoned the news, didn't we? Let's take a look at the Post. I like looking at the Washington Post. I lived in Washington for one summer, in the summer of 1992. And it was a weird town. That is a weird town, if I'm honest with you. Okay, Michael Cohen pleads guilty in the Mueller probe. Trump is attacking Mueller on that's what we should do. We should open Twitter and some of these other sources of data and see what's going on in the world. There is, I think, a beautiful thing about the Anticlimactic Non-Show, which is that there's no obligation to be aware of anything, but as we become aware of things, discussing them, I think could be a good modus operandi. Should we go see what Trump has to say in this world? Al Gore. Why is Al Gore in the news? Al Gore calls Trump the principal global face of climate denial. That's what the Washington Post is telling us today. They're also reporting. Oh no. Okay, so this is interesting. Amy Goldstein in the Washington Post. You know, I don't know what happened there. I don't know how it looked to all of you, but the thing just suddenly went bzzz. I'm so technical. It suddenly went bzzz. Hi, welcome viewer number 6. This is the Anticlimactic Non-Show. Moments ago, all power was lost. No, it's not true, but the show did cut out. This is the Anticlimactic Non-Show. We're discussing a wide variety of things. And just now, the Washington Post has announced that the Trump administration is urging states to start tearing down pillars of the Affordable Care Act by demolishing a basic rule that federal insurance subsidies can be used only for people buying health plans in marketplaces created under the law. That might sound very detailed, but the deal is we're looking now at the dismantling of the ACA. First steps of the dismantling of the ACA coming out of a Republican-controlled Senate and this guy in the White House. That's kind of a bummer, but that's the Washington Post moments ago under breaking news. Let's see what else we got going on here in the world. Let's take a look at Le Monde Diplomatique, shall we? There's always something fascinating in Le Monde Diplomatique. When I was younger, I would get the French version, and then, because you could get it first, then I'd wait and wait and wait for the English version to come out because I couldn't comprehend it, or it would just be so much easier. Let's see. Maghreb rulers cling on. It's a piece about Algeria. Oh, this is sort of interesting. Looks new too. All right. We've found something to enjoy, folks. This is from Le Monde Diplomatique. The piece has been just recently filed. This is the new issue. It's talking about the Maghreb rulers, Maghreb, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. Okay, this is a North African region. The piece is by Akram Belkaid, and the sub reads, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia have old or sick rulers quite unrepresentative of the demographics of their countries. Their regimes are growing fragile and fear being ousted by force. So, Algeria has an aged, ailing president. Morocco, a king in poor health who is abroad much of the time. And Tunisia, a president so old and frail he spends just a few hours a day on state business. These men rule over 90 million people, 60% of them under 30 years old. 90 million people, 60% of them under 30. Despite tough living conditions due to multiple socioeconomic problems, including an unemployment rate of 15 to 20%, the energy of the younger generations of these countries contrasts with the decrepitude of their leaders clinging on to power. Algeria's president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, 81 years of age, suffered a debilitating stroke in April of 2013 and last spoke in public in May of 2014. Can you imagine being in Algeria and being a 29-year-old man or woman with a president that has not been seen in public in 4 years when he was sworn in for his 4th term? Since then, he has made only brief, silent appearances in his wheelchair, causing doubts about his ability to run the state. Yet this October, Jamal Oud Abbas, then Secretary General of the National Liberation Front, that's the FLN there, announced that Bouteflika would seek a 5th term in next April's election. There has been no confirmation, with good reason, from Bouteflika, who lives in a special medical facility in western Algiers. But there have been other spontaneous expressions of support, such as September's call for him to stand again from Algeria's Federal Employers Federation, the FCE. But the Muwatana, it's a citizenship movement, of opposition politicians, ex-FLN members, and intellectuals oppose a further term which they believe to be illegal because of presidential incapacity. They invoke Article 102 of the Constitution, which states, if the President of the Republic, because of serious and long-lasting illness, finds it impossible to carry out his functions, the Constitutional Council meets de jure, and after having verified the reality of the impediment, proposes unanimously to the Parliament to declare a state of impediment. The Constitutional Court has rejected their demand, just as it did in 2014, when Bouteflika was already incapable of campaigning. That's the opening of this piece. Fascinating. The full article is 1,915 words, but I don't own the thing. I have to buy the... So now that we're doing a show again, I got to subscribe to all this stuff. But that's cool. I never had a problem with that. I like subscribing to the ones that I really like. Like, I would subscribe to the Merc. I wouldn't subscribe to the LA Times or to the Cron. You know, I would steal the Cron from somebody somehow. I would subscribe to Le Monde Diplomatique because I approve of supporting Le Monde Diplomatique. It is and was one of the best foreign policy and world global culture policy magazines or society magazines. I'm not sure how you even describe it. But there we go. Maghreb rulers. How are they going to let this guy run again? That's just unbelievable, no? What else do we have in the papers here? The Independent. That's always good for a laugh, right? We need some comedy in our lives. The Independent from the UK, their top story is the Russia investigation. They've got Cohen also this morning. We already talked about that. Trump canceling his G20 because of Putin and the situation in Crimea. Again, we talked about that. Not much in the Independent today worth looking at. Let's see what else we got. You know what I love and I've always loved since I was a child, even though I'm not a Christian? The Christian Science Monitor. An independent voice in our times, a pacifist, generally speaking, or I don't know quite how to describe it, but the Christian Science Monitor has always been among my resources for interesting articles, long form. Okay, here we go. Let's see if they'll let us read it, shall we? Kiev and the West have been quick to blame for last weekend's naval incident at the Kerch Strait on Russia, but a major cause may be Ukraine's own internal politics and unstable democracy. So here we go. The Christian Science Monitor seems to be lining up with Putin, who called the clashes in the sea a political stratagem. You know, the guy's running for election there, Poroshenko. So here's a piece by a correspondent there, and this is a quick read type of deal. That's what they have, so we can take a look at that. Fred Weir. As military engagements go, this past weekend's action, in which Russian forces seized 3 small Ukrainian naval vessels near the disputed Kerch Strait, was a small skirmish on the edges of a shimmering conflict zone. But the incident, which left 24 Ukrainian crew members in Russian custody, 3 of them wounded, is also the first time in Ukraine's almost 5-year-long conflict with Russia that the two countries' servicemen fought each other directly and openly. That is the ostensible reason that Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, citing Russian aggression, declared a state of martial law. We talked about that a little bit earlier today. If non-Ukrainians are not being let in from the land side into Crimea as of this morning. This state of martial law would give him sweeping powers to suspend human rights and democratic freedoms over much of the country, writes Fred Weir. This is the Christian Science Monitor reporter in country. The invocation of martial law underscores just how shaky Ukraine's democratic institutions remain, despite almost 5 years of aspiring to European standards. More seriously, critics worry that Mr. Poroshenko might use his strengthened powers to reshape the political landscape ahead of scheduled March presidential elections, that polls suggest he has little chance of winning. That is what Putin has said. Moreover, Poroshenko's declaration, along with other immediate outsized consequences triggered by the Kerch Strait skirmish, emphasize just how fundamental Russia's differences with Ukraine and the West are over the 2014 annexation of Crimea. And it has intensified uncertainty and could aggravate tensions within Ukraine itself, a country that remains deeply divided between its more nationalist, Ukrainian-speaking, and West-leaning Western regions, and its more Russified and Moscow-leaning South and East. Now that's interesting. You know, Ukrainian culture, Kiev in particular, but I mean, the place has a tremendous cultural heritage. You can think of, I think it's in Tchaikovsky from the Ukraine, and the Soviet Union breakup and the European Union creation leaves in its wake this unusual place for which Crimea is clearly the access point to the sea. So when you have something to leverage, you leverage it against culture, don't you? I guess is what I'm getting at. So he describes them as being a country that's divided between more nationalist Ukrainian-speaking people who lean to the west in the western regions, and the more Russian types leaning to Moscow, south and east. Despite years of a proxy war that has killed more than 10,000 people in Ukraine's east, Poroshenko only moved now to get martial law powers. That may explain the decision of the Rada, Ukraine's unicameral parliament, to scale back his request from 60 to just 30 days of martial law we're talking about, and only permitted the emergency powers to take hold in 10 of the country's 27 regions. It will affect mostly regions that border Russia, including those where anti-Kiev sentiment as well as pro-Russian sympathies endure. But then, of course, that's what we're talking about now, aren't we? That's where this will erupt, is at some border where someone's trying to get across to go see their family or whatever. Poroshenko will have vast powers as commander-in-chief to cancel freedom of speech and assembly and to curtail the media on these territories. How we will use them is another issue, and it's possible that nothing will happen, says Mikhail Pogrebinsky, director of the Independent Center of Conflict and Political Studies in Kiev. But it's unlikely to benefit him in the popular mind. Nobody thinks martial law is a good idea. Polls show that up to 80% of the population are distrustful of both the president and the parliament. That will not improve because of martial law. Indeed, in some of the Russia-adjacent regions where the new measures will be implemented, there is a risk of antagonizing local populations who voted overwhelmingly for pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych, who was deposed in the 2014 Maidan Revolution and have never fully accepted the authority of the new Kiev government. That's what we were talking about when we said that Russia aggressively, the Crimea sort of occupation, if you will, the Maidan Revolution. What happens when people in those regions that voted for Yanukovych see military patrols with armored vehicles and dogs out on their streets again, says Oleksiy Kolomiets, president of the Independent Center of European and Transatlantic Studies in Kiev. Their level of hatred towards central authorities will only grow. What is the good of this? At the nub of the current crisis is fundamentally irreconcilable differences between Russia and the West over the status of Crimea. Russia regards the annexation of the mostly Russian-populated territory as a settled matter. Boom, we took it, it's ours. And cites historical reasons plus the clear support of most of the local population. That's got a link to it, so I'm assuming there's a statistic. A new documentary aired that, yeah, they're sourcing something suggesting that he has approval, arguably. Plus the clear support of most of the local population as sufficient justification, Putin I'm talking about. Ukraine and the West, citing international law and a 2003 treaty between Russia and Ukraine, refused to accept Crimea's absorption into Russia and say the surrounding waters, including the narrow Kerch Strait that connects the Black Sea to the Azov Sea, must be jointly shared between Russia and Ukraine. Editors note the original version misstated the date of the Russia-Ukraine treaty. It's 2003, anyway. Russia, which has constructed a bridge to link Crimea with the Russian mainland. You should see that bridge, by the way. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful structure. Russia, which has constructed a bridge to link Crimea with the Russian mainland, insists that shipping to and from two major Ukrainian ports on the Azov Sea, Mariupol and Berdyansk, must queue to pass through the narrow strait, accept a Russian pilot, and submit to inspection. For the past 4 years, Ukrainian shipping has been following these rules, no small matter, since 25% of Ukraine's steel exports and 10% of grain exports pass through those waters. The Russians claimed the 3 Ukrainian naval boats that were detained following the brief battle had declined to accept the Russian rules of transit, though Ukrainian warships have previously done so. Ukraine, backed by the West and international law, argue that whether they followed Russian rules or not is irrelevant. Those vessels had every right to access the Kerch Strait, and the Russian attack on them was an unacceptable act of international piracy. The two scripts can likely never be reconciled, writes Fred Weir in the Christian Science Monitor. Quote, Russia's agreement with Ukraine on the joint use of the Kerch Strait was signed when one shore belonged to Ukraine, the other to Russia, says Vladimir Zarakin, deputy director of the Kremlin-funded Institute of the Commonwealth of Independent States in Moscow. Now there is a legal vacuum, and this Ukrainian provocation took place in waters that Russia now considers its own. Ukraine believes it belongs to them, though they have previously accepted the real state of things and abided by the terms of Russian control over the strait. Without an internationally backed settlement of the basic issue, Crimea, incidents like the current Kerch crisis will continue to happen, experts say. But though it seems unlikely that the West will help Ukraine to militarily regain Crimea, it will continue to provide strong political and diplomatic support, including perhaps yet another barrage of anti-Russia sanctions, says Alexei Melnik, an expert with the Razumkov Center in Kiev. Quote, from the beginning of this Russian hybrid attack on us, we have maintained that this is not an internal struggle in Ukraine, nor is it a bilateral one between Russia and Ukraine. It is directly part of a geopolitical struggle between Russia and the West, he says. The most important thing for us is the political support of the West for our positioning. We've seen that clearly in recent days. The civilized world is with us. The civilized world is with us, he says. Whew, Russia. I would like very much to go to Russia. That's what I would like to do one of these days. For its part, the Kremlin also appears unlikely to seek a military solution and seems to believe that time and basic economic dynamics are on its side in the battle for Ukraine's soul. This is by Fred Weir, a correspondent for the Christian Science Monitor. Let's see what else we got going on here. Oh, we did an hour and 8 minutes. We should probably do a music break. Dun dun dun. Music break. Music break. Here, I'll try to find something while we're. Let's take a look at the China Daily website. Yeah, yeah. I wonder if the China Daily has any comment on He Fianqiu. I forget how to pronounce the scientist's name who has edited the genes of human beings. Human being gene. Now that was kind of fascinating because in radio, at the top of the hour or at the bottom of the hour, they loosened the rules about it, but old-time programmers used to get really mad if you didn't, within 3 minutes of the top of the hour or 3 minutes of the bottom of the hour, you should do the station ident, which associates with the wattage, the hertz, the signal itself, the transmission, right? So you're supposed to, at the top of the hour, not be playing your music or doing your news or doing your stuff that you want to do, but you're supposed to be saying, and it is whatever, 12 o'clock, and you are watching the AntiClimactic NonShow with your host. Here on, right? You gotta do that. So, doing this again, like doing a radio show, kind of, it makes me instantly think of those types of things. Even though the whole beauty of this live stream, the logic is, I have to snap that the rules that came with radio, right? I mean, what's the point? This is the net. It's relevant. China Daily. Let's see what China Daily has to say about whatever's going on in this world here. Rain in LA. Oh, look, I didn't realize I was giving Nike so much love right now. It's an oops. Ba, 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 ba. I haven't opened this email in a zillion years. I mean this Twitter account I'm talking about. Closed loop, all must think alike. I don't know what that means. Sorry guys, I haven't opened this Twitter account in ages because I quit on the 7th anniversary, which was cool. I really was pleased that kind of shook out that way. But I should have used this for content. Yeah, see, so we're putting together how the Anticlimactic Non-Show is going to work. I think I'm going to go ahead and fire up the Twitter account again, and I'm going to turn on the Instagram to connect it to the Twitter account, and all three are now going to be connected to the program. Okay? And then since this is portable, right, we're going to take the show on the road. Not just do it here in the studio, but do it, wherever we are at 9 a.m. in California, noon in New York, 5 in England. I could be in England. It could be 5 in England. Pub, baby. And again, what I would like very much, to all of you 5 viewers, I would like very much to have a small audience of people around the world is my objective here. So if you know any people who are awake at 10:30 in Mumbai, for example, or if you know somebody who's awake at 2 a.m. to 5 or 2 a.m. in Tokyo, right? Or 3 a.m. or Istanbul in the evening at 8 o'clock in the evening in Istanbul. I would love to have a person from Istanbul in here writing stuff in the chat window there and saying, here, quick, look at this link, blah. We go to the link, now we're reading more sort of close to the ground content, you know what I mean? You're an African. You know this one? Oh man, I love this one. Don't mind the nationality. You have got the identity of an African. Cause if you come from Clarendon, and if you come from Portland, and if you come from Westmoreland, you're an African. The Anticlimactic Non-Show. So don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. Don't mind your nationality, you have got the identity of an African. But if you come from Trinidad, and if you come from Nassau, and if you come from Cuba, you're an African. So don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. Don't mind your complexion, there is no rejection, you're an African. I love that. It's the reverse, right? It doesn't matter if you're light-skinned, you're an African. I love that. And if your complexion low, and if your complexion in between, you're an African. So don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man. Okay, here we go. Media Matters. Danny Metcalf. Awesome. We have something to read. No mind denomination, that is only segregation. You're an African. Cause if you go to the Catholic, and if you go to the Methodist, and if you go to the Church of God, you're an African. So don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. Don't mind your nationality, I've got the identity of an African. Cause if you come from Brixton, and if you come from Eastgate, and if you come from Eastgate, you are an African. If you come from Bronx, you are an African. And if you come from Brooklyn, you are an African. And if you come from Manhattan, you are an African. And if you come from Manhattan, you are an African. And if you come from Canada, you are an African. And if you come from Miami, you are an African. And if you come from Switzerland, you are an African. And if you come from Germany. I love that tune. I really love that tune. All right, this is interesting from A. Metcalf. This is pointing out that there is a massive media giant, which is called Sinclair Broadcasting, right? Is that what they're known as? And so they are a pro-Trump media giant, meaning that they can produce content and have it hit across multiple platforms at multiple times, instantaneously. And the nonprofit group Media Matters, I love Media Matters, by the way, MediaMatters.org. Hey, Metcalf is correct. Used it for years, love it. We're talking about using this medium to talk about media critically. That means that we all have to think about media critically now, right? That the old rules are gone. We should have been thinking about them critically before, but now certainly that's the case. So this is about thinking about media, and Media Matters, which can be found at MediaMatters.org, is a great place to go to learn about that. So she or he has sent me, A. Metcalf has sent me, they are about to start broadcasting what they're calling a must run. So all of their stations are obliged to run this content. And it is really weird. It's a segment about what they're calling a migrant crisis on our southern border. This news piece that, if you want to call it that, this migrant caravan that has been now bandied about for the last several weeks, especially up until election day and in the days past, is bringing out it's kind of like being used, I think, as a tool to I don't know. I don't even know how quite to think about this. But they've got their host, this one Boris Epstein, uh, basically promoting the use of violence to prevent the entry of migrants into our country, including the use of tear gas. So on November 25th, a group of Central American migrants traveling in a caravan approached the U.S.-Mexico border, prompting federal authorities to launch tear gas in an apparent attempt to get the group to disperse. This was reported by the San Diego Union Tribune. According to federal officials, some members of the caravan threw projectiles at customs and border protection personnel, and multiple agents were hit with rocks. U.S. forces launched pepper balls and tear gas canisters at the crowd, which included children. Which is just insane. I mean, that's just insane to me. It's just insane what we've come to. Okay, so then on November 26th, the chief political analyst and former aide to the administration, Boris Epstein of Sinclair, I don't know how you pronounce it, Epstein, Epshteyn, released a new must-run segment that we were discussing for the company that defended the use of the tear gas on the families and attempted to stoke fear, saying the group of migrants is attempting to storm the border in an attempted invasion of our country. Like, just inflammatory ludicrousness. They have it here. I'm not going to play it, but they also have the text of it. And this segment with this fellow, Epstein, saying that this is happening, there's a great escalation at the border, and we have to, oh my God, we can't allow this attack on our border, is now going to be aired and often spliced into local news coverage on an estimated 100 Sinclair-owned or operated news stations throughout the country. It's already aired on stations in at least 24 states. So I'm just clicking to see where is Sinclair. Well, that's pretty cool. FindSinclair.com. You can see where Sinclair is in what stations in your area are a Sinclair station. For example, oops. CBS 29 in Bakersfield, the Fox station KMPH, blah blah blah. Yeah, terrible. That's freaking crazy. See, when you have privately owned media, this is what happens. So, right, exactly correct. A. Metcalf is correct. We should use the anticlimactic non-show to discuss topics of this sort, and then be able to tell people when they see that programming, okay, that's just, a private company telling you their opinion about things. There's no news there that's legitimate, if you will. Oh, wait, I had to say show so that you could see the link in the chat there. I love Media Matters. There, I've hit show so you can just see the piece itself. MediaMatters.org is a good site. Very good site. I am a fan. All right, so we've gone, what, an hour and 23? Today we had 5 viewers. That is very pleasing to me. I promise you this will become more professional slowly. And I'm going to make some adjustments here shortly. And content will be more, I think I'm going to have a much more organized clock. But I've been trying to prevent myself from producing a show. In fact, naming it a non-show was critical to me because I'll have a habit of like trying to make it a show from having produced shows. So sometimes I should just like sit here and pick my nose or something. I'm not going to do that, of course, but I mean that aphoristically, or shall we say, metaphorically. So, one of the things I've been interested in is, the Google is always listening thing. The idea of your phone constantly listening to you. So, yesterday, I did the show. I talked into this mic the way I'm doing with you. And I said a bunch of stuff. I never wrote anything anywhere. And my phone kicked up tons of stuff based on the content that I spoke aloud to the mic of my phone. There were extremely unique and specific things in the Google search bit, in the YouTube search bit, in cross-platform. What is the term for that? Targeted content. And I never wrote a word about. I never texted anyone any of those things. So every phone conversation you're having with anyone about any product is now so I wanted to do a test of this, right? So yesterday, I don't know if you watched it, but if you did watch yesterday, one of the things I did is during one of the music sets, I put this product in my hair because I got it from the hairdresser. And she was like, in the winter, your hair will get drier, blah, 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 something. Try this product out. It'll be nice. It'll make your hair feel good. And so yesterday while the music was on and it was chill time, I put the product in my hair, but I didn't say the product's name. I just picked up the bottle, squeezed some out. It was in frame, right? And I wanted to see if it could read visually the product, right? So another test I want to do that is I want to pick something super specific and like hold it up for a second and then put it down. And then wait and see if I start getting ads or content or, And I find this, if you've read Siva's book, as Christopher has, you will know that he's such a beautiful guy and such a smart person and an excellent educator because he's so professional about helping you, one, unpack what is actually happening there it's very easy for me to say the 21st century, as I've been saying now for years, and I keep trying to say, is fixed elections, illegal wars, and permanent surveillance. Fixed elections, illegal wars, and permanent surveillance is what we're enduring right now. But the permanent surveillance side, which began with Patriot Act, then FISA, then Patriot Act 2, and now and then, oops, Verizon or whatever, the couple of federal cases where, I mean, we're living now in a time when this content is just the notion of privacy has just been I don't know, splintered to uh, basically. I'm trying to think of the term for it, but I find it amazing. I find it amazing. I don't know. I don't know if it makes me want to go live out in the woods alone where I'm not picked up and blah 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 blah, as much as it makes me want to use it better so that why am I getting this certain things in my stream? It makes me want to go find like a bunch of intellectual content and just quickly follow all of it so that at least the stream is heavily weighted with content that that I really could use rather than hair product, right? Or I forget what else we discussed today. Um, balkanized privacy. Balkanized privacy is an interesting term. Yeah, something's going on. But we did an hour and a half today. That's crazy. I wasn't really prepared today fully. I was a little bit scattered. I am going to go ahead and call it here, I think, because I want to try to get this studio stuff done. And I don't want to just leave you all hanging around. So thank you for watching. Feel free to comment or say anything in there. I'll be back tomorrow, same time. And I hope you'll join me. I'm not going to wear this shirt, though. Look at that. I look like such a pro Nike guy. Fuck Nike.